apparently when you're neurodivergent, neurotypicals can just sniff you out.
Yep, this is true. And it's part of the reason why a lot of neurodivergents get scapegoated. My name is Taylor Nicole, and I'm the founder of Daily Plus CEO, personal development brand for the neurodivergent. If you are a neurodivergent, you probably have experienced being scapegoated one too many times, especially for an example in the workplace where it is a very neurotypical environment, and then you have that one neurotypical manager or somebody in leadership who notices, wow, you know what, there's something different about this one. Guess what? We're going to just single them out and start mistreating them for no reason because we don't understand them. And so that happens a lot. What can you do about it? Absolutely nothing. You can either start your own business, find another job that is more neurodivergent friendly, or you can just be homeless because, there's no other options.
So apparently when you're neurodivergent, neurotypicals
for treatment for your mental illness you are being detained under Section 3 of the Mental Health Act for treatment for your mental illness in a psychiatric hospital. I suppose the treatment was the hours and hours of restraints. I suppose the treatment was being forcibly injected with sedatives instead of allowing me to calm down myself. I suppose the treatment was being stripped of my clothing and blankets and then being watched by 2 male staff members an arm's reach away from me. I suppose the treatment was being restrained as soon as I began crying or shaking instead of verbally de-escalating me. I suppose the treatment was being dragged down corridors, being pinned to the bed, being shouted at to calm down, and being physically manipulated in ways that made me cry out in pain. I suppose that was how I was supposed to get better. I was 14 when I was first detained under the Mental Health Act and admitted to an adolescent psychiatric ward. Over the next 3 years, I was detained many more times under different sections of the Act. Those detentions saved my life on many occasions, but they also destroyed my life in ways which I did not know were possible. I remember thinking to myself, what is the point in being sectioned and kept alive when I have been left more unwell and more traumatized than before? A law made to outline and uphold the rights of some of the most vulnerable members of our society was also a law that allowed for such degradation of a teenage girl struggling with her mental health. Instead of being used to support, safeguard, and ensure the necessary treatment was in place for me, the Mental Health Act was used as a lazy excuse and getaway clause for excessive restrictive practice and inadequate care. You're sectioned, you don't have a say, or there's no point in arguing, you don't have a choice, were common phrases spoken in the walls of the wards. My voice was void once the section paperwork was signed. It would be incorrect to claim my time on adolescent psychiatric wards was entirely negative. In every admission, there were staff members that did their best to support me and made the experiences more bearable. But their care, kindness, and dedication often felt so foreign on the ward. The systems around them were not ones of care and compassion, so a good staff member always stuck out. There was only so much they could do to make things better. When the foundations of a system are broken, it's a losing battle being fought. Society has become too comfortable with the state of mental health care in our country. They are reassured knowing that people aren't being locked up in asylums and chained to beds or tied up in straitjackets. They claim to care about those with mental illnesses, but they cannot claim to care if they're continuing to sit back and watch such brutal and dehumanizing acts unfold under the name of treatment. They cannot claim to care when they are comfortable knowing that hospitals are re-traumatizing people, often leading to multiple or prolonged admissions. They cannot claim to care when they are watching people be silenced and disempowered by a system that is supposed to instill hope and support recovery. Our requests for changes to the Mental Health Act and the mental health systems are not unreasonable. We are just asking that the frameworks and systems ensure people with a mental illness are being treated with true compassion, dignity, and respect. We are simply asking to be treated as human beings. It is 2.5 years on since I was discharged from my last admission, and yet every day I am faced with memories from my time in hospital. The trauma of my experiences was so intense that I had forgotten a lot of what happened to me, and it is only now that I have started recalling certain events and memories. Despite receiving trauma therapy for my PTSD, I will never be able to remove the images of what went on in the hands of people that were meant to care for me. As I tell my story, it is important to note that this is not an abnormal experience. In fact, it is no different to what so many people have and are currently facing whilst detained under the Mental Health Act. The pieces on display in this exhibition are a testimony to this. So I stand here today as a voice for all of those who are victims of the injustices in the mental health system. and I stand here with the hope that change will come. And we will continue to tell our stories till that change does come. Thank you. Being detained under Section 3 of the...
Have you ever been struck? I've heard so many people say, my bully's a nurse now, or they became a cop. And when I talk about disliking or even fearing authority, people don't understand why, but this is why. And just like someone will go into a field because they want to help people, another person may go into a field because they want to exploit people. And I have such a hard time trusting that people won't abuse the power they are given. And I think it's important that we do question authority because authority is not always right. And it can be almost impossible at times to speak up against authority, which also scares me. Anyone else have this aversion to authority? I would get in so much trouble as a kid because I didn't let adults treat me like trash. And if they spoke to me or my fellow students unkindly, I asked them not to. And I had so many boundaries just disregarded or dismissed by authority figures. I literally once had a doctor that tried to shut down my kidneys because I had eczema. So, my lack of trust in authority figures has definitely saved me on multiple occasions. I've heard so many people say, my bully's a nurse now, or they became a cop. And when I talk about disliking or even...
If you've got somebody that is toxic and narcissistic in your life, and you stop putting up with their manipulation and their control and their disrespect of you, or maybe other people around about you that you're protecting, your family, what you'll probably hear from these people is them using your mental health as a way to discredit you, as a way to make you question your memories, make you question your reality, and of course make you question your emotions. And you'll hear language like that you are far too sensitive, like you're making a mountain out of molehill. So they're obviously dismissing your emotional reactions to their blatant disrespect at this point. They're going to be saying things like that you are unstable, that you are losing it, that you need to calm down, and you probably need to go and speak to a doctor. You need to get on some medication, or you need some therapy. And even the fact that they're using mental health as a way to, hurt you and to beat you, I think is one of the lowest forms of control I have ever heard. And sadly, I've experienced it too. And I do think that this is a real clear indication of how toxic the person is because of their refusal to, look at themselves and own how their behaviour has impacted you. So I think it's really insidious behaviour, right? And I don't say that lightly. And it is insidious because they tell lots of people about you, maybe they even tell people about your past, traumas, your childhood, and this is the reason why you're behaving in the way that you are, sort of thing. So the whole thing is disgusting. The thing is, you are not too much, you're not too sensitive, you do not need to calm down. The thing is, you are being abused further and you're being mistreated and you're finally standing up for yourself and you're no longer allowing them to disrespect you. So you're definitely not crazy, you're all there and more. So the problem that they're having is that they don't like you having boundaries and they are now losing control of you. And the thing is, you're taking your power back, which is something that they will never be able to take away from you ever again. Take it from there. If you've got somebody that is...
This vid is going to free you from the way you are and the problems you attract with authorities, with your bosses, with getting tickets, with anyone that is an authoritative figure. I'm going to explain how, why it works, and how to get out of it. So I guarantee you, if you feel smaller, if you feel nervous, it could be at the airport, it could be with your landlord, it could be anything like that, your boss. When you feel hesitant to speak up, when you are nervous around an authority, government official, police official, any one of those things. Here is why. Guaranteed your family was skewed. Guaranteed you were not treated in the most loving way. Guaranteed your mother or your father or both were harsh on you. And guaranteed, because it'll be difficult for you to be in the energy of just simply stating, this is not right, I'm not good with this, way too hard, when you're in an infantile energy and feel you have no fucking rights. That's all it is. When you get to the point where even though it feels uncomfortable, you speak up. And for those that might be in a dangerous or compromising situation, of course, don't speak up then, leave, and then speak up. The other thing you need to realize is you get way too chummy, way too heartfelt, friendly, way too close to these authority figures in trying to fill the gap between you and your family. Therefore, you're happy because this vid is going to free you from the...
Your company has a mental health policy that was written. I want you to hear.
I heard someone say you can be fighting for...
In the workplace, if you are being bullied by a manager, is it worth taking it to HR? No, it's not. The problem you're going to have with being bullied by a manager is that human resources or human removals, human remains, human replacement, they are going to defend the company and they are going to instantly make a plan on how they can mitigate and sweep this under the carpet without the company getting a lawsuit. That's basically what it is. They don't want to pay you a load of money to leave because they don't want to pay that. And also they're going to think about, okay, how much of an impact does the manager have in his current role and what's going to be easier to get rid of? The complaining employee about a bully manager, or deal with the manager, which might be a bit more entangled within the company. You have to...
If you are living with a chronic illness and you...
Do you have issues with authority? If you do, you definitely don't feel like you are the author of your life. Deeper. Stop, and pause. Think about it. Authority, author. Do you have issues with authority because you don't feel like you are the author of your life? Where did you feel like you didn't have control? At what point in your life? Was it in childhood? Was it in adolescence? Was it in adulthood? Was it at work? At what point did you feel like your power got stripped away from you and felt like, you know what, fuck authority, fuck the system, fuck anything that keeps me in charge and in control, I am in control? When did that start? Because I guarantee you, it's because you feel like you don't have control, and that's why you rebel, that's why you have issues with the system, this is why you have issues with all kinds of situations, all kinds of systems in place that are set up that doesn't make you feel like you have a voice. And the effects of that is actually great, because when you let go of the rebelliousness, that's when you start to understand that you are the one in control of your life. When you feel like you can be the author of your story, of your life, that's when things fall down. That's when things fall apart, because nothing can have a hold over you. Yeah, okay, there are control systems in place. Okay, yeah, we do have to follow laws and regulations, but that doesn't take away from you being the author of your life. For me, I had a very overbearing parent, like super to the max, narcissistic. It was not a vibe. So I have been rebelling since childhood, and it's taken me a long time to figure out.
Do you know what the one fucking thing I can't fucking stand is when people cry wolf when it's their own mental health. They preach about it. It needs to be more recognised, mental health, this condition, that. But it's okay when it's them, but they don't spare a thought in their mind when it comes to them affecting other people's mental health. I'm sorry, but you don't get to quote it and then preach it when you don't even adhere to it yourself. Where do you get off in that high horse that you're sat on, thinking that you can adhere to all the things that you want to based on your little rules, but when it comes to other people, it's not the same rules? Someone who is conscious of someone else's mental well-being does not move the way that they do. This is someone who is self-centered and will only think about their own state of mind. No one else, just them. When you are the sort of person that moves maliciously to try and cause intentional detriment to someone's state of mind, you do not get to preach about mental health. Do you know what the one fucking thing I can't fucking stand is when people cry.
The problem is there's no clause.
Hey Sharon, thanks. I work in the NHS and I'm going to say something that people don't like hearing. The NHS is failing people who need help with their mental health. And it's not just because of waiting lists, it's not just because of funding, it's because of how it's designed. I'm reading a fantastic book at the moment, which I think actually everyone should read, called The Politics of Mental Health, which really criticises the way that society addresses mental health and treats it and provides support. And when you work inside it, you see it. And I see people who have waited months and months for therapy only to be offered 6 therapy sessions and then a discharge plan. I see people in crisis who are told that they're not unwell enough for secondary services, and then I also see people who are told that they're too complex and are constantly bounced between teams. This feels really relevant with everything that's going on in society today. The NHS demands that your suffering needs to fit a certain criteria, and if you can't compress your trauma into a diagnostic tool, you don't really qualify. So if your distress is caused by poverty or racism or insecure housing or burnout or domestic abuse, the response isn't societal change, it's a prescription. We've turned political suffering into an individual problem. Instead of asking why there's so many people that are anxious or depressed or exhausted, we're asking what's wrong with your brain chemistry. And the NHS participates in that. We try and medicalise your survival, we pathologise your response to inequality, and we frame breakdown as a personal weakness rather than a systemic failure. And the NHS and the system as a whole doesn't ask, what's happened to you in the society. It asks, what disorder do you have? And once you have a label, you then become a case that we can manage. And the NHS isn't built to transform the conditions that make people unwell. It's built to keep people stable enough to function within those conditions so that you can keep working and you can keep living in this capitalist society. And when we pretend that crisis is just about funding, we let the deeper problem off the hook. Mental health care in this country is reactive, it's threshold driven, and as someone who has worked with people who need support with their mental health and been on the other side of it, it's often really dehumanizing, and the people who pay the price are the ones that are already struggling to survive. We don't just need more appointments and more funding, we need to stop pretending that distress caused by injustice is a disorder. Until we confront that, the NHS will keep managing the fallout of a broken system and calling it care. I work in the NHS and I'm going to say something that people don't like hearing. The NHS is failing people who need help with their mental health. And it's not